Okay. Hello. Welcome to the, I'm going to rename the panel. You have a bunch of Native people on a stage and you call the institution panel. I think we've been institutionalized enough.
Hey! Exactly why we're here.
So first, I would just like to ask if there's anyone who needs ASL interpretation, if you could identify yourself so we could direct this person to you. All right, so Tanse Nitotemte, Jarita, Greyeyes, Nitsigasan, Maske Osagahiganik, Otsinia. My name is Jarita Greyeyes, and I'm from the Muskeg Lake Cree Nation in Saskatchewan. So I'm a visitor here to Treaty 1 territory from Treaty 6, and it's an honor and privilege to be able to work and live in this territory as a guest. So I would like our wonderful, I think we're going to rename it the Indija Awesome panel. So I would just like everyone to do, the Star People panel. So I'd just like everyone here in the panel to do just a brief introduction and introduce yourselves in the way that's appropriate for yourself. And also if you could say your pronouns. So I'm Jarita Greyeyes. I'm the Director of Community Learning and Engagement here at the University of Winnipeg. Just as a note, everyone here has also consented to have their photo taken and posted. So you can take our photos during our panel. And please do, indulging one of my native Oprah fantasies. So thank you.
Danse, my name is Jack Saddleback. I'm from the Samson Cree Nation in Musquecheese, Alberta. And I'm the, thank you, Musquecheese. And I'm the Cultural and Project Coordinator over at Out Saskatoon. And a very out and proud Cree, Two-Spirit, transgender gay man.
Hi, Jack. I'm Marjorie Beaucage. I'm Michif, originally from here, Manitoba. My ancestors are from the Red River Valley, originally from Algonquin territory in Quebec, and I now live in Duck Lake, Saskatchewan, the other Métis homeland, where they had the only civil war in Canada. Yeah. More later.
Bonjour, Peetanacoot, I'm from, my name is Peetanacoot, Nenakawekapo. I'm from Scotland, Manitoba. I'm from the Wolf Clan. I currently work at Nine Circles and also the Aboriginal, what is it called? Health and Wellness, sorry. I just started this job about 2 months ago. Do you think I would know the name by now? Thank you.
Do I use this one? Okay, we'll pass that back down.
Ani, hi, hello, welcome, Tansi. My name's Emma. I'm Indigenous. I'm Anishinaabe from Charlotte Lake, which is a little town about an hour north of Kingston in Ontario, if you know where that is. I know, no one does. But I also spend a lot of time in Toronto, the lands of the Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee, so a lot of my teachings find root there as well. And I'm here with the Native Youth Sexual Health Network. That's Native Youth Sexual Health Network. That's right. We got some fans in the house. We're pretty sick, I know. And we'll have some time to break down what we do, why we're so awesome, why everybody loves us. All right. And I'm here with...
Aboshte Mitakawesan, Destry Love Rone, also part of the Native Sexual Health Network. I'm Nakota Sioux from Treaty 6 territory in Alberta, roughly around Edmonton, Lexus First Nations, and I go by they, them pronouns, so I would like to be addressed with such pronouns. Thank you. I'm happy to be here. I'm honored to be here with everybody else here on stage, and I'm excited to have these discussions with everybody. Good.
Bonjour, Nijawik, Mani Shikaba, Indigenicas, Anemiki, Wikwedding Dunji, Amek Dudem, Nina Nishnabe Kwe, Anishnabe Nene, Anishnabe Manidu Kwe, Anishnabe Ojijak Kwe, Kinigagon Dinanaki. My name is Manisha Kabe. I'm from Thunder Bay, Ontario. I'm a Beaver Clan, and I am a Two-Spirit elder. I'm with the person who walks with all the Two-Spirit people from the past to the present to the future. Do I have any more time? I know everybody's in a hurry. I feel like everybody's in a hurry, going somewhere and getting nowhere. Okay, I just wanted to say something a little bit about what we're going to do this afternoon. I think they're talking about institutions. I think that's what the theme is for this moment. Well, I work with a lot of institutions. I sit on the board of Lakehead University in Thunder Bay. I sit on the board of Thunder Bay City Hall with the Elders Council. I've been invited to sit with Oklamarty High School, but I'm thinking about it right now. And I also sit with Toronto OHAS, Ontario Aboriginal HIV/AIDS. I sit there too. I also am with a new group of young people called Minowi Sinigadada, and they are working from Midland, Ontario. And I work with the youth over there. And then I have been working with the Two-Spirit Native House for the Men. I think that's what it's called. Yeah. They're doing we're working on, I'm doing sweatlot teachings on Humble River with the young people. And they are awesome workers. And the Minowi Sinigadada are the first young people that taught me about gardening and about how to preserve things. I mean, I knew it way back then, but I wasn't practicing it. But when I saw these young people doing what they are doing and the tobacco plants they plant, it's awesome. It's really beautiful work these young people are doing. And they're all Anishinaabe young people striving for their own journey, trying to find themselves. They come in white bodies, but so what? They come in different colors, and they all have First Nations in their body, mind, and soul, and that's who they feel. That's who they are comfortable with. And I totally agree with that, and I'm going to fight for them in every way that I can in my own journey. I am for the young Two-Spirit people, the babies, the kids, the adults, the young, the whatever. Whoever's out there ready to walk this road should have every right to say they have a voice. These young people are very strong and well-minded young people, and they show me a lot of things that they want and they need, and they have good voices, and I think we should listen to them right across Canada and even around the globe. I think it's time for them to run this place because we are not doing any better. They can do a lot of good stuff if we just sit down and listen to them, and especially those governments. I don't care if they're Prime Minister Trudeau or whatever it is. It doesn't really matter to me. I think they should hear the young voices. It's time, and we should back them up. We should walk behind them. We should walk beside them. We should lead them. Everything you do in your life as an elder, as a human being, these babies have every right to learn everything you're going to do in your house. And it always starts and it always begins in your bedroom, in your living room, in your kitchen, in your bathroom, in your doorway, in your windows. These are where your kids need to learn from you, because you are the example for these babies that are born, that we carry in our mother's womb. Just like the planet, the Turtle Island. We live in this Turtle Island. We were brought here to do something. We were asked to do something greater than other people can't do. Our job is to look after our planet, our water, our air, everything we do, our trees. The trees are the ones that preserve this water. And the more we lose these trees, we're going to drown. We're going to be like that old storytelling right back from the past, like my grandmother used to tell me. That tiny little muskrat is the one that saved this planet. And I don't care if you guys don't believe in those stories, but I do. I believe in them. I don't care what anybody tells me. I know. The beaver went down there, couldn't do it. The beaver came back and said, well, I need somebody else ahead of me. So the little muskrat went for a ride on top of the beaver and went all the way down to the ground to get that little earth. Then on the earth comes the frog. Frog takes over, blows it all up. And then the eagles, they come and they surface where the land should be. They are our teachers. They are our guides. They guide us to our destiny. They give us the strength and courage that we need every day when we are here to follow these things. So every institution that I do and I work, that is my teaching. If they don't accept that, that is okay. I work with a lot of students from different nations in the lands relations in university. I said I'm with the Aboriginal program in the university, but I'm also with the other program where I work with a woman named Leslie Korthright. She runs the program called Land and Relations. So I get to meet all walks of life there, all kinds of students that are taking on that responsibility. And then I'm also being invited to be part of the law school now. So I'm with the lawyer students now. I have so many students that are coming to me now, talking to me about what they want and what they need in their institutions. Everything else that was provided for them before is not working. That's what they're saying. So we have to push our government a little bit aside. I'll give you one example of what happened last summer. Two spirit people were supposed to lead the Toronto Gay Pride. They were supposed to lead it. I was there. I was invited to lead the group. And as we were about to go, Prime Minister Trudeau jumped in front of me with his little army and the vehicle, and they took over our front line. So this is what they do with the First Nations people. Your government, you're the boss of your government. We are the bosses. And what we do, we allow him to take over because we believe this Trudeau is going to do a better job than the other ones. They're not. They're puppets. That's what they are. They are run by the corporations. The corporations are the ones, when they look at us, all they see is dollar signs. That's all they look at us. We're not human beings to them. We're just a little S with a stick in the middle. That's what we are to them. We are not really good. They just tease us with money. Oh, we got this big pile of money, we're going to throw it way over there. We're going to throw some way over there. While they're running over there, fighting over that money, we are going to be working on our bombs. How to fix this world. How to make this better. Only rich people will get to live. The First Nations and the people that are poor, anybody, even rich Anishinaabe will probably, if he ever make it to be a rich Anishinaabe, will make it wherever they're supposed to go in the next lifetime. That is what I believe in, what they're doing, and I'm sorry to sound a little bit like I might be angry, but I'm not angry. I'm just trying to pass this message on to you people to listen to the students, our future. Your future, my future, of my great-grandkids, my great-grandkids. My grandmother raised me in a bush. She was over 90s when she decided to raise this tiny little baby who was born and given up for adoption. That was me. And then she decided to look after me, and she told me I was a two-spirit child when I was 4 years old. And I was so happy because I didn't know what that meant. But it didn't matter. I thought, wow, that's the greatest thing I ever had. It was the greatest thing I ever had. And she told me I was going to have a hard life. And it was true. I had a hard life. Big deal. I left my hard life behind and made tools out of it. I use my life to make myself stronger and to teach people and to use that tools that what happened to me can be used over and over. I'm reusable. I'm just like the recycling person. That is who I am. I'm here to deliver these messages to you guys from my grandmother, from her grandmother's generation, 7 generations storytelling she told me that is available out there. We just have to look for it. Somebody here earlier said you got to dig that piles out. That is true. You have to dig around. Everything is not all paper. Storytelling comes from mouth, from your brain, from your heart, from your tummy. You have 3 roads to follow, and it's all in your body, mind, and soul. And I added 1, your feet, because without your feet, you won't go nowhere. So we really have to take care of ourselves. We have to look after our feet. How many people gets up in the morning and talk to your feet? I do. I get up in the morning, I say, me gwech, for having my 2 feet still working. How many people talk to their arthritis? I do. I do that every morning. Good morning, arthritis. Nice to see you. How many people get up in the morning and look in the mirror and say, hi, I love you, Manisha Kabe? How many people do that? Right, see, not very many. I've been telling that to the kids. You got to start looking in the mirror and say, hey, I love you. You're beautiful. You're going to do good work today. Because if you don't do that to yourself, your self-esteem is going to go down. And everything that I did in my life, in my book, in the story that I told, that's not all of it. I got many more stories to come, many more storytelling to do. But I've got so much that I empty my body, mind, and soul a little bit. And now I'm light as a feather. I can dance. And when I go dancing, I don't just dance to show off. I dance to get rid of my energy. I dance away the people that tell me their stories, their pain, and their sorrow. I let it go at the dance floor. If I'm not dancing, I walk it away. I get rid of them. I don't get rid of them totally just out of to hurt them. I just get rid of their feelings. They give me their feelings. They tell me this is how I feel, this is how I've been treated. I walk away with it because I love them. They come and talk to me. I go and I listen. Okay, what is the best medicine? That is the best medicine. You are the best medicine if you give yourself and look at yourself and admit who you are. If you're weak, say you're weak. If you're strong, say you're strong. If you believe in the Great Spirit more than anything in this planet, it'll get you through because that's what got me here today. I could have died 12 times. I'm on my way to the 13th time. When I go back home, I will listen to the bad news or good news, but that's okay because I'm ready. Whatever I'm going to hear, I'm going to fight every step of the way of myself to be who I am and to allow myself with whatever I'm going to be told. That's okay because that is me. I am strong, and the Great Spirit lives in me, gives me all the things that I need just for today. I don't worry about tomorrow. Even when I said I was going to speak, oh, what is the items today I got to talk about? I got to talk about institutions. I got to talk about schools. Oh, yes, that's another thing. I started my journey with school. I do artwork. I'm an artist. I do lots of art, different kinds of art. I work with different mediums. I do a lot of things. And then I go to jails. Elizabeth Fry Society, I go there and work with the mothers that are ready to come out or the men that are ready to come out. I work with the Creighton Center, which is between the age of 10-year-old to 16-year-old that are, or 18-year-old that are in jail for the crime they did when they were young. I go see them and visit them. We built sweat lodges in the jail. Now the jail has one permanent sweat lodge. The big jail has one permanent sweat lodge. I was part of that, and I was so happy to be part of it. Because people in there really heard about Manise trying to do this, Manise trying to do that. There's a lot of elders that are out there. There's lots of good workers in Thunder Bay and lots of other ones that walk different roads. And I don't mind them. I learn lots from them. They learn lots from me, I hope. We all share our knowledge with each other. And that is all the best that I can do with people, to give them information. Hospitals, I am part of the hospital too. I go to the hospital once in a while when I get invited. I talk to the patients that are dying. I listen to the ones that are getting well. I speak for them because I speak the language. And then I also, the library has asked me to come and be part of them. I'm thinking about that. And the friendship centers are asking me to be part of it, but there's only so much of me I can give. Too many bookings happening. Right now, that's what's stopping me from being involved in all in all the places in Thunder Bay. I also did a movie called Fire Song, if nobody has ever heard about it. It's a fire song. It's a movie. I was part of it. And I did another little part of the movie called Older Than What? It's a short documentary. That's going around too. And then I also did another one just in Toronto. About a week ago, I went there, did the opening for the art for Buddies in Bad Times. They did the opening for these young people that are doing the canoe, I think it's called, or something they're working on. And they made a video of my story and turned it into a rap music. Can you believe that? I'm a rapper now. So what else am I going to be pretty soon? But that's okay. It doesn't really matter. Somebody, one of my friends, or old friends, I guess, I don't know if she's jealous or not or whatever, but she said to me, "Aren't you a little bit too old for all that stuff to be acting like you're a young person?" And I looked at her and I said, "Well, you know what? What is old? What is old to you?" "Well, anything over 55 plus is old." And I said, "No, that's just the beginning of new career. New beginning. New beginning when you hit 55 plus, whatever they want to call it." I do that. I said, it doesn't matter how old I am. You're not going to see me stop dancing just because I hit 55. Big deal. I'm going to be running and I'm going to be dancing until my feet drops off my body. That is what I'm going to do. And thank you very much for listening, and I hope you guys listen to the students, the young people especially. Please, you young people, don't be afraid to go and ask anyone that's older than you, what is this about? Just ask, and you will receive good information, and we will all share. Thank you, Miigwech. And I want to just say a little prayer, just in case I don't have time to say that after. Manituga gagwejman nongom juiji shnang, wewene jibimu tuang bamatas win nan nongom gagishagak, wewene gejibimusayang umatia king, when the pekai jagadeg, umatas chikano mati win gajagadeg, University, gadajindam gashgagi gitanan wang nongom now quick. We jishnam wewene jibimu tuang. Jazagi tiang, Jashwani mitiang, where any give most young nongum gagishak. Miigwech.
Oh. Wow, she does it all, I guess.
I hope you all will take notes.
That's right. I also just want to acknowledge, I forgot in my opening to acknowledge the pipes that were lifted yesterday. It really is important for us to start in a good way, so I want to just acknowledge those people for doing that yesterday. So today when we came onto campus, or when you came, you noticed that we were flying both the Pride flag and the Two-Spirit flag, which was designed by Albert McLeod. So I'm really interested to know what projects you worked on were sort of a small thing, like raising two flags, but had a really big impact in terms of the way that we think about gender, or how we make our spaces more inclusive for our two-spirited selves and families and others. So if you could give some good examples, and maybe we'll hear from these real awesome young people.
All right, so I'll start with a few of the tangible items when it comes to projects. One such project that we were able to do over at the University of Saskatchewan when I was the Pride Center coordinator, so it was the guy who was gay for pay on campus. That was, don't Google that, by the way. Just not on a public computer. All right. But in 2013, we had brought together a number of people, including Alex Wilson over here, who is situated at the U of S, to change our discrimination and harassment prevention policy to include gender identity and gender expression. And we are one of the very first U15s to also include two-spirit identities. But I think the U of W had actually beat us to the punch there due to your human rights code for the province. So that's pretty awesome. So kudos to you on that. So that's just like a little tangible item. And that took a number of committee members, but it didn't take that much time. And I'd really like to highlight that because of the fact that as soon as we showcased the human aspect to it, and we had two-spirit people in our community at the U of S step up and say, this is important to me, that's when everyone else started getting on board, when you add that human aspect. And there are other places that we've been able to add that human element. With the Mental Health Commission of Canada's Youth Council, I was on there for about 6 years. And when the Mental Health Commission of Canada's strategy was going across Canada, and it was all written, one of the big things that really kind of ticked me off was the fact that they hadn't consulted that many two-spirit youth or queer Indigenous youth. So when it then eventually landed on the Youth Council's table, one of the things that we said right off the bat was, let's rewrite this so we're going to make it accessible to everyone. First off, we're going to break down all of this jargony language because, as we know, that's not really a fun thing to read. 300 pages of language where you have to also have a dictionary with you. I didn't really like it. So we took that, we broke it down, and then I also was very vocal in having that gender and sexuality aspect throughout the whole thing and not just a subnote within the new strategy that we had translated. So those are two things. The last one that I'm really going to highlight is the another tangible one, and I'll leave the out Saskatoon stuff to my good friend Marjorie here. Was at the U of S, we also incorporated gender-neutral sweats. This was in 2012, was our very first one that we had put together, and it was quite the process to go out into the community. I myself, I'm from the Samson Cree Nation, Musqueam, Alberta, so that's halfway between Red Deer and Edmonton, and then I moved over to Saskatoon. So my way of growing up in ceremonies is different from where I'm currently situated in Saskatoon. As a young person, as a young queer androgynous kid, I was able to go into the sweat lodge in shorts and t-shirt. I didn't have to wear a skirt. I didn't have to go and sit on any side. It was very much just a gender neutral ceremonies that I grew up with. So moving into a new space and finding that it isn't necessarily the same way that I grew up. It was eye-opening to also see the two-spirit folks in that area say how uncomfortable they felt at times going into ceremonies. So I sat down with some good friends of mine, and we kind of brainstormed some ways to be able to address these issues. And one of those ways was, how about we just make gender-neutral sweats where folks don't have to sit on a female side or sit on a male side, and we just emulate what's happening in other places. So I didn't know a lot of elders in that space around that time. So we asked one of our knowledge keepers to go out and seek a person who would be able to help us move on with this. And unfortunately, we weren't able to find anyone. So the knowledge keeper stepped up. Their name is Bob Badger, and he's the one who ran our sweats. And that very first sweat, we had roughly about like 25 to 30 people, all packed in, all like slippery and slimy against one another in that sweat lodge. But it was so just heartwarming to see and hear some of the stories that were shared in that lodge of acceptance, of feeling as if they weren't being pushed outside of their culture anymore, and that they were able to walk in and be themselves and be affirmed in every step of the way. And for myself as a trans man, it's important for me to be affirmed in all of my ceremonies. And it's also important for me to open up these conversations within our Indigenous community, but also within our queer community. Because if we're not talking about these issues, we're just perpetuating the violence against Two-Spirit people. We're perpetuating the violence against our young people right here. And that can't stand any longer. So I am super glad that everyone's around here today. We're going to share some more stories. But those are just 3 items that I'd like to share with you right now.
I don't remember the question, but doesn't matter. I question everything anyway. That's who I am. I always joke, most babies are born with a cry in their mouth. I was born with a Y in mine. And it was why? I don't stand for any injustice, and I want to know why things are the way they are. I have been that way since I was a child, and it has gotten me into a lot of trouble. It has caused me a lot of grief. I've banged my head against institutional walls all my life, even from being born left-handed. The hand of the devil, as I was taught. And now they recognize, well, we're creative and gifted. So I use that to say, because they didn't change me. They could not change me. I would get wrapped. I have no sensation in this hand because I got wrapped so many times on my knuckles. But in this finger, one finger. So I use that as a teaching thing now. Say, this was once the hand of the devil. And now it's recognized as...
Closer to your mouth.
Oh, now it's recognized as being gifted. So I said, it's like being born gay. It's like being born different. It's always a part of who you are. There's 4% of the population that's left-handed. There's at least 4% of the population that's born gay. You know, it's that, and it takes a while to change attitudes. For people to understand that. And it's like institutions. Galileo Galilei, back in that way back then, he said the earth was not flat. And they didn't believe him. With his imagination, he created the telescope to show people what he saw, to share his vision, and they refused to look. And even to this day, we still don't believe Galileo Galilei completely because we still say the sun's coming up instead of the earth has turned. That's how long a paradigm shift takes. And ideas get institutionalized and ingrained as the truth. And I spend a lot of time thinking about things, even though I don't have any letters after my name. I am a philosopher, thinker, artist in my own right, and I question. And I think it's partly because I'm winter-born, and winter people like to reflect and look at what's going on around them and connect the dots. It's part of the gift of the season. That's what I was taught. Anyway, so when I think about institutions and all the ones that I've been a part of, from the church to the arts, to the queer community, to health, to corrections, to all of them. I've been in all of them. We are all in all of them. They impact all of us every day. Then I think they are systems that are carefully crafted and bureaucratized to make us conform, and without my say a lot of times. So I prefer to think of myself as not fighting against systems because that hurts. I've spent too much of my youth doing that. And now I see that well, even then I could see that it burnt me out. And so then I ran away from home when I was 40 and I went to film school. And I found my voice in a different way. And used that story medicine for my social change. And so that's what I mostly do, is use story and art and film and those things as medicine and to do the work, to have our voices heard. I've been part of a lot of social movements, some that from the 60s when AIM started, and the cultural revival in our communities in the 70s when it was no longer against the law to do ceremonies, and all these things came back from the underground, the people that had taken care of them and protected them. And then the women's movement, I remember going to a lot of feminist gatherings, and there were so many discussions, and the black women and the lesbian women and the dykes and all these arguments and fighting and everything that was going on. And I was sitting there, and it was like, this is not how we are as women. This is not a woman's movement. This is trying to fit into the man's world. And go to women's conferences, and they were the same as all the other conferences. It wasn't reflecting who we were. And I'd say, well, why don't you come and sit in the circle with us? Why don't you come to a moon ceremony with us? Why don't you come? They never, ever got it. And this is the thing that's even today with the talk of reconciliation, it makes me so mad, is that we have another world view with a different way of being in the world that's not based on the same values. And if you do not enter our worldview, you will never get it. If you don't come and sit in ceremony with us, if you don't come and walk on the land with us and pick berries, if you don't come and dance with us in the circle and the round dance or in the powwow, you will never get us. And it's like all this attempt to include us in your stuff, that is not respecting that we have our stuff. We cannot be equal partners if we are not equal. And if you don't even know that we have another way, how can we be equal? So that's been my frustration a lot of time with institutions and even with so-called progressive movements and social movements, is that they don't really, they always want us to come into their stuff, but they never recognize that we have our stuff. And that would be the first step to change the next 150 years. Like, in this 150 years, that's 7 generations to us. That is 7 generations. And the teaching is, this is now the time to light the 8th fire for the next 7 generations. Because that's how we think in terms of generations. Not in terms of 150 years of war and oppression and all that shit. Because, Canada, 150 years, what's going on is the English mind and the French mind that were fighting in Europe over lands and money, they brought those wars over here, and they're still fighting the Plains of Abraham in this country. We're still fighting the English and the French, and we're still fighting, and then the Indians on either side of those battles, and in between them sometimes. So that is not a way to plan for the future by looking at that history. Because it's not our history. It's France and England's history. And a lot of the people who are here had nothing to do with France and England, and I heard that this morning too. It's like the black people and all the other people from other countries that came here. That's not their history either. So, going back to institutions and looking at even the queer institutions and history. Everybody, how many people here heard of Stonewall? Okay, that's pretty. Well, how many people heard about Martha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera and Virginia Cruz? Because of the movie that's on Netflix right now, The Death and Life of Martha Johnson, you know? And you know what happened to that story? It just came out. If you don't know these people, they were these trans women that were at the head of that movement in New York City for the liberation of queer people. It wasn't the gay white boys. It was them on the streets of New York. And they're not recognized and celebrated in most Pride events. Pride events have become corporatized now. We all know that. And like Manny was saying, they can displace. We still haven't had Indigenous-led Pride in Saskatoon, and we're still at the only there if we insist on being there, and it takes a lot of energy sometimes to do that. I don't always want to fight for my place. I just want to take my place because it's mine. And I'm fighting. When I have to fight, it's for the next 7 generations. The reason that I do what I do and why I went to Out Saskatoon to make a place for us there, why I went to the Banff Center to make a place for us there, why I go and try to create places in these institutions, I think because we have a right to be there. But now I think sometimes we need to just create our own places, because as soon as we leave those places, they forget about us and they go back to the way they were before. That has been also what I have learned. If you're out of sight, out of mind. I have gone through many institutions and artist-run centers, nonprofits, all kinds of organizations, and it's the same thing every time. And so then I say, why am I wasting my breath? Well, some people change one person at a time. I mean, the only reason I went to Out Saskatoon was because when Walking with Our Sisters came to Saskatoon, the lodge for the missing and murdered women, I was one of the grandmothers that was asked to be there, and I had to fight almost every day for our place there as Two-Spirit, even for the firekeeping. I remember one day, and so we have our own. Since when did our culture become institutionalized? So I started questioning those cultural protocols, because I asked the elders, okay, so when did we first start to stand up to pray? We used to sit in our lodges, we sit down to pray. We sit close to Mother Earth to pray. We don't stand up to pray and bow our heads. That's a church thing. When did we get skirts? When did we get ribbons? 150 years ago? Maybe. We didn't have ribbons before. What did we use for offerings? We didn't have Walmart offerings, like, go and buy stuff to give tobacco and cloth and ribbon. No, what did we do to make offerings before that? Those are the questions you have to ask. And that's what I called earlier an archaeological dig, to dig through the colonial trash to find our truth, to find our life there. And in our cultural DNA and on our blood memory and in our cellular memory and in the stars and in our ancestors standing behind us, that's where we retrieve that information. When we started our first Two-Spirit gatherings and subsequently, we didn't have all this knowledge that was just there that we could just pick up. We had to dig for it. We had to pray for it. We had to fast for it. But it is there, but we have to work for it. And it's not like it's just given to you and all of a sudden I'm all wise. No, I'm not all wise, and I don't think I'll be an elder because I'm not that kind. But I try to be a good person, and sometimes being kind is telling the truth. So that's how I am in the world anyway. And I try to create alternative ways and create rituals or create safe spaces that are welcoming for everybody. And it's like people talk about inclusion and exclusion. We never excluded. That's why everybody's here. So this is inclusion is not a good policy. I'm saying that historically, but no, it's like welcoming is a good policy, but inclusion and exclusion and selection and all of that is not a good policy. And then this morning we were talking about education, and I was really grateful for all the wonderful reflections around that. And one of the things that came up with the queer manifesto that we've, that's been evolving, because nothing is fixed. As soon as it's fixed, it's institutionalized, and as soon as it's institutionalized, it's exclusive. So that's how I look at it. So I just wanted to say about calling out. Calling out doesn't mean put down. Like was said this morning, that in making a relationship with someone and having a conversation and naming things by their names, speaking your truth, that is not a hurtful thing. If you speak for yourself and your truth and in your place, and you ask questions, what's going on here? Was it always this way? What was there before? And when I ask people those, and I ask that of traditional knowledge keepers, and I ask that of elders, because I said, if you don't answer those questions for me, you're depriving this generation of their inheritance. They have a right to it. And if we've forgotten, we have a duty to remember. And that's what I tried to do, is to bring that remembrance. I'm not, fixed in stone, because our cultures have always evolved, and it's very fluid, and there's always room and change and adaptation. That's why we're still here. But if we didn't do that, we'd be all dead. So as a half-breed in between these worlds where I've lived most of my life, that's what I've learned, is that because you're not welcome in either one completely, even though you can sort of fit in, but not really. And, there's all these divisions that have been created by these institutions. And now the government says I'm an Indian. Well, hell, every time I go to the gas bar and they say status or non-status, and I always come up with a different answer. And then sometimes I say, well, I have status, but not your kind, not the government kind. I know who I am, so it's like, what is that going to do if the government recognizes me as an Indian now? What does that mean? Does it give me rights? I have my rights. I know who I am. I know what my rights are. I don't need permission from anybody to be me. And that's why I get in trouble. Because I don't wait for permission. And besides, when I grew up in the Catholic Church, it was easier to get forgiveness than permission. So you just do it, and then you say you're sorry if you hurt somebody. It's a lot easier. So those are things that I wrote down this morning when I was listening to, or after the conversations. But undermining, our own spaces. And just one more thing, I think. Yeah, I can come back to other things later, but I have just one more thing I want to say. What do you think the worst invention in the world is? I mean, I've thought about this a lot. The wheel, that was one that came on my list. I'm down to 2 right now. It's the clock or the alphabet. Well, anything that that was put down in books that was considered the truth. The alphabet did that. Made books that wrote things down, and that became the official record and the official truth, and the Bible and everything else. That once it was written, it was the truth. So, now I think, well, we were saying Facebook, like internet, like there's so many forces of industrialization, institutionalization, capitalization, corporatization, that all are for the same end in that Western worldview: money. And I just want the prime directive in our worldview is all my relations. So, all our relations to each other, to the land, to everything, that's what's the most important. So, when we sit down together, we have to acknowledge those different worldviews and learn more about it. I mean, we're in Star Wars, Star Trek. That's my, that frontier mentality to boldly go where no one has gone before, all of that. And we're Star people, so we've seen them coming a long time ago. but the thing is, they had a prime directive, do not interfere. I wish they would have applied that when they came here 500 years ago, too. Do not interfere with other cultures when you meet them. Learn from them. Exchange with them. Eat with them. But those are things that I think about sometimes in my winter years. But thank you for listening. It's old, young, old, young.
Oh, goodness. So there is structure happening. So the secret is that we're freestyling it now, and we've thrown the old questions out the window, and now we're just going. So we're going. Ani, everyone. My name's Emma. I'm here with the Native Youth Sexual Health Network, which I said earlier. And you may have heard of us. We're pretty fantastic. We are a youth-led network that is across Turtle Island. So we've got some youth leaders down in New Mexico, and we've also got some youth leaders up by Nunavik and in Nunatsiavik. So personally, I'm from Toronto area. I've done a lot of my work there. I have a lot of my teachings come from there. And so part of being a network is we have youth leaders in so many different spaces, and we also have aunties in so many different spaces. So there are some familiar faces here. We have our Auntie Alex Wilson over here, who we all got to go and hang out with this summer. And we have our awesome community family member, Jack Saddleback, on the panel with us. And we just, pretty good to feel surrounded. So we say that we do everything and anything that we, as Indigenous youth, to know to affect our minds, bodies, and spirits. So in the past 10 years of Nishan existing, that's looked like a lot of different things. And often it'll be youth leaders responding to the needs individually of their communities. So, you know, to Toronto, that's looked like we worked planting tobacco, Two-Spirit youth planting tobacco in Toronto on the banks of the Humber River and funding that, and that was a lot of Nishan folks who were doing that. It also means like me and Destry just got back from up in Alaska where we were blowing up condom balloons and beating condoms to talk about uteruses and reproductive health and reproductive justice. And we talk a lot about what does violence on the land equate to violence on our bodies? How do we manage that? How do we look at that? So, yeah. Okay. Well, there's two of us today, which means we get double the time. But no, really, the reason why there's two of us is because one of our values is we don't send people to do things alone. We're all youth. We're youth-led, youth-run. And so that means under the age of 30 is what we settle on for our definition of youth. I started with the network when I was 8 years old. OG community styles. I was following around youth leaders to all their different workshops, being like, what's this? This is a dildo. What's a dildo? Well, let's talk about that. So I got to follow everyone around to all of their different things. I got to go to all of the vigils, all of the spaces, and then gradually was mentored into the role that I'm in now as a youth leader and outreach coordinator with a network. I think the original question was for us to label some of the work that we do.
Or a project that you're proud of that, you know, maybe was one of those easier wins but had a big impact in terms of.
I mean, easy wins, that's not really a thing. We talk about labor and how do we measure our labor as a youth-led network, and it doesn't really work to measure it by hours because a lot of the times the violence that you have to experience to get through the work doesn't equate to how much time you spent in that situation, right? So can you think of something spectacular we've done recently? I don't know. I think we supported the Rites of Passage at Aguasasne. So Aguasasne is a Mohawk community, straddles the Canadian and U.S. border. And we've been supporting the Rites of Passage for a couple years now. And that falls well within our range of what we do. So the Rites of Passage ceremonies have changed over times with colonialism. A lot of what we do with them is talking about like bodies. They become lumpier and hairier as time goes on, wrinklier too. And so we look at that. We look at our bodies and we talk about the earth and how is our relationship with the earth and relate to our relationship with our bodies. So how do we do a gardening project where you sculpt out some breasts and you plant tobacco in them and you sculpt out all different things of body parts and you plant the seeds in them and you have to cultivate that food. It is medicine. It will feed your family, but it's about having that relationship with the earth, having that sexual relationship of touching someone's boobies. Super fun. But having the first time doing that being with your Mother Earth. So we're pretty fortunate to share a lot of these teachings and to be able to do the work that we do. As youth. Yeah, I guess that's the other thing we wanted to focus on here. We are the youngest people in this room probably, saving there's a baby running around. I will get my hands consensually on the baby. So it's my birthday. Can I get a hell yeah for my birthday?
I think we should sing her happy birthday.
It is my birthday.
Are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready? Come on, we can do it. There's two birthdays.
We're sharing a birthday. Oh my goodness.
Okay, are you ready? Happy hiya, 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 hiya. Emma, hiya, hiya, hiya.
Oh, Beaucage. Amazing. I was saying that it's my birthday to say that I'm turning 18 today, which makes me much younger than y'all. And we have to look at a lot of the barriers for how does a youth organize. For instance, I couldn't apply for a credit card until today. I might have worked contract positions for 5 years before now, but I couldn't apply for a credit card. And screw credit cards. There's so much trauma about debt in my communities. But there's a very real barrier there, which means I can't book plane tickets, and I can't book hotel spaces, and I can't check into a hotel that someone else has booked for me, or for the youth that I'm bringing to different places to do different workshops or to do different outreach opportunities. So a lot of what we also do is looking at our values around how do we support youth organizing. What are the practicalities? So, for instance, it came through like a couple of days ago that the honorarium me and Destry were receiving for this event was $45. Now, it's about a $70 cab ride to the airport and about, whatever cab ride takes to get to the hotel in Winnipeg and then to get to the hotel to the other Winnipeg airport and then back to my home airport to home. That would leave me about $200 in debt just from coming to this event, to say nothing of what I would have to spend on food, and that's just about travel. So we also have to look at meeting youth where they're at. And so one of our values is always to write youth honorariums into all of our funds. So I think in terms of little things that have big impacts, the original question that was supposed to be our first questions was, how do you include Two-Spirit and queer and trans, Black and Indigenous people of color in your work? And we looked at there's a big difference between inclusion and centering. We are not including queer and trans Indigenous youth in our network. We are already here within this network. We are centered within this network. We are the decision-making power within this network. We are this network. And sure, we've got lots of our family who don't identify as queer or trans, but we are centered well within this network. There is no inclusion in something that you already are running, walking with, dancing, my niece said. Where was it going with that? Yeah. So the little impacts around our values are like making sure everyone's fed. Everyone gets fed. I don't care. We will put our funder into debt. We'll put whoever. Everybody gets fed. Everybody arrives. We'll try to make sure to reimburse on the spot. The goal is that everybody leaves your event with all of your spiritual fingers and toes intact. We want everyone to leave whole. We want our youth to leave whole from the events. So I will bring 15,000 bundles of sage with me, and I'll smudge the place down, and we'll leave if it's not safe. But the priority is to take care of ourselves, and through that work, we can then take care of all of our other communities, because it does start with us. So another piece of our work is challenging our communities to begin centering their youth again. Because one of my Anishinaabe teachings is that the youngest start in the middle of the circle. That you're not expected to know everything, and that this also applies if you're coming back to your culture. If you were separated and you are coming back home, you're coming home to your nation, is you begin in the center of the circle. And so what we're looking for and what we often ask communities to do is, how are we centering our youth? How are we listening? How are we not trying to include them in some opportunity, but instead centering and listening to their needs and supporting them to get done what they need to do in order to do the incredible work. That's right. Beaded condoms and all. Knitting uterus plushies. We try to make it Indigenous as possible. So we make some punk patches, whatever. We keep it local. We keep it fresh. I think I'm running low. Would you like to? Yeah. I guess we also do work around HIV. Transmission. Really, we're everywhere. We, support reproductive justice means also supporting midwives and doulas to do their Indigenous work. Yeah, so right now we're supporting an Alberta summit for Indigenous full-spectrum doulas to gather. A lot of what we do is connecting the resources to the youth. So you want to do this. This is what's important. This is the need in your community. Yep, culturally safe. Yeah. So earlier in the last panel, they were talking about language, and I really, really admired Cameron because every time they spoke and they used some term, they really broke it down as they were speaking. No problem. They just broke down, and this is what colonialism means, and this is what this big 18-syllable word means, because it's not accessible language. We all know that English is colonial, so then it shouldn't be a surprise when English turns around and harms us. It shouldn't be a surprise when you know that English is colonial and then it turns around and bites your youth in the ass. So we talk about breaking down these language barriers. We talk about, looking at what language means. We support language nests and support language initiatives in Indigenous communities. You want the mic? You want the mic? I'll share the mic.
I just want to say something real quickly. We're talking about accessibility to separate spaces and language, and I just wanted to say for me, coming from a small rural community in Alberta, being a prairie queer and being isolated and not having access to this type of language or any of these conversations, it's very hard. And then I remember the first time I went to something kind of like this, I had no idea what anyone was saying, because I come from a small community, and we're still 10 years in the past. We still don't use the language. We don't talk about colonialism or decolonization or what does queer mean, or what identity means to us, because we're already trying to survive colonialism and that type of trauma. So being in these spaces and trying to access the language that everybody's using, it was really hard for me at first, because I felt like I wasn't allowed to have the space to talk, be a youth to speak, because I didn't understand what half the people were saying. It's something very inaccessible for me at first, and for a lot of youth in general. A lot of the youth I work with have a hard time speaking with me, because some of the language I use, I'm oh yeah, we both come from the same place. We could both come from isolated communities, and a lot of the language we do use is inaccessible unless we break it down with them, unless we get onto one-on-one bases and speak with these youth in these rural communities, in these small areas, and we don't have access to some of things. It just was something I wanted to add to that.
And that's the power of peer organizing, hey? That we can know each other, and we can see each other reflected in our work, and we can see our experiences reflected. That's the power of peer-led networks. And that's our goal in remaining youth-led. So we have had folks age out of the network this year, and we've added them to our fabulous rota of aunties and mentors who still guide us through our work and who still guide us through our lives, of course. Yeah, so originally, actually, this invite for this conference was extended to one of our aunties, one of our amazing former youth leaders, Erin, who's wonderful, but who doesn't actually represent the network anymore, who isn't an accurate representation of what the network's current values are, even though she might have been around at the initiation, because she's no longer a youth. So part of the importance, part of this decolonial process, if you would, is recognizing when you need to step back, and recognizing when yours is not the voice that is needed at the moment, when you have enough access to enough spaces that you can instead support someone else to access the space instead. So Erin passed along the request, as she should, and also was really amazing in supporting us to come, because I am still in high school. And yeah, I've organized some pretty amazing things and done some pretty great work, but it's really nice when I can focus on high school, because high school is a violent enough experience, all on its own.
I also just graduated, which is something that was really hard to do, trying to be in these spaces, and then also trying to go through 9 classes. It's very hard. I just wanted to go on what Erin did for us to be here, stepping back. I think that's one of the biggest things you can do for your youth, because we always talk about what can we do for youth, for them to be in these spaces, for them to have a voice, for them to speak to their own truth and to speak with all of us, and to share these these feelings that they're not quite understanding yet, because we're young and we trying to get there and get our feet on who we are and our identities. And something that Erin does for us is they know when to step back, and they know that we are the voice that needs to be heard, because we are the youth that need to be here and to share these experiences with everybody. And I think that's one of the biggest steps we can do is go back to the basics and remember we need to step back for the youth. We need to make everything more accessible, language-wise. We need to help them get to their feet, because we're still young and we're still learning, right? And through my experiences trying to be here to exist to this day and live my own truth, it was very hard. Everything was very hard to get to where I am today. It's people have spoken, living your own truth, as hard as it is, and then going through institutions, and then going through like, even like getting here to this conference was hard, like going through an airport and being misgendered and being misidentified, or like having racism thrown at you. It's like very hard to like exist and to even have a voice at these places because of the many barriers that exist in our lives. And I think it's very important what Aaron did for us to be here and to speak.
Totally. Yeah, because sometimes that's the tricky thing with listening to Indigenous youth, is they might say things that don't really make sense to you. They might say things like, you need to go over there and sit in the corner and focus on your doulas right now, Aaron. You need to go make some more uterus plushies because we need to step up into our governance model. That's what happens. And we very much also do take on a harm reduction approach. We recognize harm reduction as an Indigenous model at its core. And you can find all of our theories about that and our practical research about that on our website. So in terms of recognizing harm reduction as a model, we recognize that sometimes walking your truth is not the safest option. Sometimes that's not what's available to Indigenous youth, and often that's not what's available. We recognize all of the barriers that are in place, and when people say that Indigenous youth are at risk of X, Y, and Z, we instead look at like, what's really causing those risks? Things like colonialism and violent racism and transphobia and cissexism. Instead of pinning that blame on Indigenous youth, it's important to look at those reasons instead. Yeah?
We look at like our faults in being there, like it's your fault that you're at risk, but really like what can we do when we're young and we don't even understand what colonialism and how it's affecting us? Like, it's our fault though that we're at risk because, you know, we don't know better, right? But it's, you know, colonialism, the thing that's affecting us and making us like look at our skin and be like, I don't understand anything. I don't understand my identity. I don't understand like my indigeneity. I don't understand anything. But, you know, it's our fault that we're at risk, right? So we try not to look at that like at-risk youth kind of like, you know, model and ideologies, I guess. We try to look at like beyond that, like what can we do to help these kids, like, you know, not make them feel like it's like their fault entirely, like that they're the reason why they're completely person. Yeah, help each other. I just like wanted to go back on like why Mission sends like a group of us, because like, I mean, Emma was saying that they started doing this stuff when they're 8. Imagine sending an 8-year-old to an event by themselves. Like, is that reasonable? Is like that plausible? No, and I was like 14 doing this. So I'm like, I can barely go on an airplane by myself. Like, navigating these spaces on our own, as hard as it is, and having that expectation to be alone, it's like, and it's just like, it's really hard. And that's why we have each other when we go to these type of things, because we help navigate these barriers and help navigate our own traumas and how we can help each other to be in these spaces, to exist in these spaces, right? Yeah.
Which is not to diminish the brilliance of Indigenous youth and their resiliency. It's not to diminish our resiliency that we can, and that at 8 years old, I existed in some very violent spaces, and I navigated through them to be here today. And it's not to diminish that Indigenous youth do that every day, but it's instead to support and to recognize that everybody wants to be nurtured, or that you don't want to, and that's okay too. And you have a right to be able to determine what's happening to your own body, but that might not be something that you're able to do right now. So how can we support you to reach that? Complicated conversations. Are we at time?
I don't know. I don't have a watch. But I would like Peetanacoot, sorry, worst moderator. Peetanacoot, if you want to just talk a little bit about maybe some of the work that you've done. And
What is it, just a little bit? I'd like to thank you for giving me this opportunity to share with you what I've been doing in the last few months. I work at Nine Circles Community Health Center, and we deal primarily with HIV and testing with STIs. And we have services that we do provide. I'm just giving you I have a pamphlet here, and we do have a table next to the wellness room. I was going to say elders room. Wellness room, and that's where And that's where you can go and visit Ninth Circle's table, go and say hi to them, and they'll give you more information. I'd like to talk about what we provide: counseling, social support, advocacy, example, housing and employment rights, outreach. We got a dynamic outreach support people in Ninth Circles, Aboriginal cultural support, health education, health promotion, PHA assistance fund, and the food bank. The counseling is for anybody. It's open. There are some services that are open to the public, but you have to be a client. You can't just go in. We're not a walk-in clinic. You can't just go in and start services through Ninth Circles. You still need to get some intake that they do there. And we also have social support, different coffee shops, coffee talks, shops. But however, some of these services are persons living with HIV only, like Coffee Talk is an example, and also advocacy. Advocacy is for anybody. It's not just for PHAs only. And outreach is primarily persons living with HIV. And those are some of the outreach workers that go out to drive some of the clients to their appointments. And it's not necessarily for them to drive you around all over like a chauffeur or something like that, but it's more or less to get you to your appointments. And Aboriginal support is a small piece. I'm the one that does that small piece with some programs that we do provide there at Ninth Circles Community Health Center. I've been working at Ninth Circles for 14 years. I'm on my 14th year. And we do have a round room where we smudge. We have pipe ceremonies, sharing circles, healing circles, naming ceremonies, feast, and we go medicine picking, storytelling, language. I teach language, and I'm very fluent in Ojibwe and a little bit of Cree and English. So I learn from the people as well. Like it's not just a one way. I'm teaching everybody everything. And we go medicine picking, and we have an off-site sweat lodge. It used to be at St. Benedict's, and we had that lodge there for 17 years. And we just recently had been using some of the sweat lodge ceremonies at the Thunderbird House. This summer, I think I've done about 5 sweats for Ninth Circles Community Health Center. And those sweat lodges are open to anybody. It's not just PHAs only. It's not just Two-Spirit people only, but it's open to anybody who's respectful to us. A lot of the people that I work with, they know that I'm Two-Spirit or trans. But I go back and forth, and I was just looking at the panel here. I'm the only one with a skirt. I'm the only brave one. Just kidding. No, but it's just a joke anyway. Yes, you can say watch it all you want. I'm probably tougher than you are. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm on thin ice. Sometimes humor can be humor. Sometimes you can step on people's toes. And I'm capable of doing that sometimes. Barbara knows that. But anyways, so that's what I wanted to share you about this skirt now. I'm going to come to my defense. When I've gone to sleep one night, I had a vision about this skirt. It wasn't just something that I said, oh, I should be wearing this, or I would like to wear this. Maybe this will look good on me. And it wasn't about that. It was about my vision. And this is what I'm going to try and share with you. As youth, when you have that vision, go with the vision. Even if you have to take some time to proceed with that vision, follow your vision, and even when that's the whole idea is sharing your vision and doing your vision and proceeding with your vision and learning your vision and learning from it and practicing your vision. And I'm only saying that because that's what I had to do. I had to kind of dance around with this to share this vision with one of my relatives. And they said to me, it is probably for somebody else. And then that's about 20 years ago. If it had been a male's dance outfit, so to speak, she would have helped me right away to make it. It took her about 10 years to finally make me an outfit. It was an older woman's traditional outfit. And now I have been wearing skirts even when I do ceremonies. And I also like to also say that I am positive, HIV positive for 26 years. And being a fighter, being involved in ceremonies, and I've gone to sweats and a lot of sweats and fasting and also sun dancing. I also went as far as piercing. So when I help the communities, I don't feel like it's help. It's being part of the community. They help me, I help them. We do things together. We try to do things in a humble way, respectful way. We respect is the one thing that we keep talking about. We have to respect, and we have to keep that open, that door open for people. And if somebody does something one way, that's not the wrong way, or that's not the only way, and that's not the right way, but that's how they do it. And sometimes I say to people, this is how I do it. And whatever you were taught, they even ask me sometimes how to dress. You know, all those things they want to know. And that's what, how to dress. And I said, dress how you're comfortable of dressing. As long as you're being respectful, we'll respect you, I respect you. That respect goes a long way. So and when we do a lot of this stuff, we do it together, and we also do periodically. Sometimes we'll go and pick out the rocks, but not just lately, but in the last previous years. So we do a lot of that stuff, and there was also a competition when I went to this job interview. There was a competition. I saw some of those candidates that had a lot of knowledge from university knowledge and Red River Community College knowledge, but I had a lived experience. I think that's what got me this job, and I have the patience, working part-time for 14 years and just getting by. That's the only source of income I have at the time. Just in the last 2 months, I've mentioned that I had Aboriginal Health and Wellness Center that I'm currently working out for 2 months and really involved with the people, and nobody questions about my skirt or my background, and it's not that's not too much of a concern because we do have a lot of sharing circles going on. And we did some medicine pouches the other day, and language, where I was teaching language. And I said, these alphabets are not our alphabets, and just write to the best of your ability, just the way it sounds like. Write it the way it sounds like, because it's not, because if you try to learn syllabics, I'm not fortunate to say, I do know syllabics, because I don't know syllabics. Syllabics are symbols. That's what syllabics are. And I know some people that actually do syllabics, still read syllabics, but I'm not that one. So So I'm involved I also have a lot of teachers. Barbara Bruce, Elder Barbara Bruce is also one of the people that helped me quite a bit. Star Eagle Woman is another one. So we have a lot of people who helped me with this work. A lot of women have been helping me quite a bit. And when I go into the lodge, I always ask the women to sit next to me because I feel the women are the backbone of our nation. That's what I've been taught. I was taught by my grandmother, my mother, my aunts, my cousins, and that even the women here, some of the women here, I learned from those women. And sometimes I bicker with the women, Barbara and Marjorie, and even Manny. They're not major, serious bickering, but minor little things, just minor. So that they're usually sometimes to do with lighting them out. Who's going to light the match, kind of a thing, They're very minor. I've also been involved in some of them for the last over 30 years, some of them. And a lot of those work that we do, like I've been traveling a lot to, like some people mentioned, to some of those committees they've been at. I've been involved in a committee for a few years. I've also been with the Canadian Apprenticeships Network for 13 and a half years, and I'm being patient about being a rep from this region. And Katie, the Canadian Apprenticeships Network, and National National Aboriginal Council on HIV and AIDS. I just stepped down from that committee. I've been on that committee for 12 years. I'm on Katie. This is my second time around on Katie. I get involved in the community. I like to get involved in events and also some of those drop-ins that I'm involved in, and try to give that opportunity. Where in 1999, that was in April, where I was in my deathbed, and my mother is the one that did a lot of praying for me and my dad. And then she said to me, she didn't say this to me, but when, just like I was hearing her, she said to me, "You're going to get out of this hospital." That was in 99. And I said to myself, I was going to give up, and I said to myself, "You got more work to do." So I got up and I did what I need to do to make myself well, and that's taking treatment, and also using some of our traditions that we use. This is not necessarily supposed to be testimonial, but that's how it turns out to be. So a lot of things have been going on, Two-Spirit gatherings, events that I go to, conferences and so on, and meeting a lot of people and learning, because I have to learn to be doing some of those sweat lodge, building the sweat lodge and doing it together. So because I like to involve, even when I do a lot of the stuff, I involve people. And I don't like to tell people what to do, what to wear, what to say, where to sit. Just follow what we're doing and do things in a respectful way. Try to get active, but sometimes I'm having some issues, sometimes even with health. I'm talking about I had surgery 2 years ago, and that sometimes mobility can be an issue. And my husband is very tired. He's sleeping. Happy birthday, honey. I just wanted to wake him up. So I just got recently married to this year, June 2nd. Here. and Barbara did that. Barbara did her wedding. So you can get married. Those are get married now. Yeah. But that's that's what I've been doing. You know, it's I've been involved and I got something from the community, and sometimes I feel maybe I need to give something back. The community was so giving to give me something that I need, that helps me along the way. And not everything was easy. You can't just say, oh, I had it all done in just a matter of weeks or days. It wasn't that way. I heard the elder this morning when they said they had their struggles. So we have our struggles, yes. You know, it wasn't always easy. It's not just something that you had in a golden platter. You had to work for some of that stuff. And I encourage everybody in this room to follow their visions and also to work out what they want in their lives. And I'd like to thank you for giving me this opportunity. And if you heard something you like, that's good. If you didn't know, it's too bad. Anyways, thank you. Just a bit of humor. I hope you know by now. Thank you.
Chimigwich, Peetanacoot. We're just going to conclude our panel. I'm just going to ask everyone to share, you can do two things. You can share a word that you feel like you want to share with the group, or if you want to share a call to action that you've been thinking about. And I would just ask you to be concise and in my most respectful way. I don't know what I'll do if you're not. A hum or something. I'll be like, I don't know. Albert? I have one question. Yes. Okay, Albert, we're going to give you a mic. Hold on.
Yeah, the question I have, which I think is really crucial, and I think it was tweaked by the Nishan youth, you were talking about rites of passage. Now, that's really coming big, and I think it intersects with queer, trans people of color as well, because it is about community, culture, identity, is what are the rites of passage for Indigenous or QPOC people in Canada. Because there are people going out there, Indigenous people, who are doing rites of passage. They're doing Indigenous parenting, and they're not including Two-Spirit people. So to me, that's really lapsing back into colonialism, the binary gender identity, and really reinforcing homophobia and transphobia. And for me, when I was like 12, I was wearing my sister's crinoline. Like, that was my rite of passage, right? And we really need to start to have our voice in this thing, because what's going to happen is we're going to get excluded. And I'll tell you, this is a recent incident that happened, not an incident, but situation. A mother approached me, and she told me her son was gay, and he was 11 years old and feminine. And I know instinctively that she needs to have a feast for this child. But that hasn't happened yet. Like the feast is honoring their truth and reality that they have a gay child. And in that culture, that particular role is very honored. So that's kind of the gap that really needs to be filled, is we need to be on the agenda when people are going across Canada talking about rites of passage culturally. We have a lot of newcomer people from the Middle East, from the Philippines, from, all over the world here, and that rites of passage is still very strong in those cultures. So I think we need to have these conversations about, sexual debut. You know what that is, sexual debut? Doesn't that sound great, sexual debut? It's when you have your first sexual experience. And we have to say, well, maybe mine was oral sex or whatever. And it has to be, how, other people, well, I lost my virginity. Like, that's a rite of passage in Canada anyway, and getting your driver's license. But, and that's what I'm just saying, like, if we're to do this work about honoring the lives of queer people, we have to honor those rites of passage as people become sexual, become adolescents, and move on in their lives.
Totally. Minnie, can I go first? Can I go first, please? Okay. Totally. We have a lot of conversations about what rites of passage look like, including about like sex. Like, what does that mean? We just came from a community up north where we had like some very difficult conversations about virginity and what virginity can look like and what does that mean in their tradition. Definitely challenged my notion of what peer-led leadership meant because I wasn't from that tradition. I wasn't from that culture. And so was I really their peer then? I'm an Indigenous youth, but I was from way south of there. So we had those conversations. But in terms of reimagining rites of passage, like we joke at the network that a Nishan rite of passage is to get bed bugs on one of your trips. Because we stay in community members' houses, we stay in whatever motel, the band council can afford to put us in, wherever, and bring home critters with you. So we joke that that's one of a Nishan rite of passage, is you're not really in Nishan until you've found a bed bug in your suitcase. But, in terms of actual rites of passage, one thing we're finding now is around naming ceremonies. So people go and they want their spirit name, they want their Indian name, and for sure, we support people who want that. Feels meaningful to you. But particularly we look for trans youth around how can we empower trans youth to come home to their bodies and to come back for their bodies and to feel empowered to stay in their bodies. And one thing was to do coming of age ceremonies around naming. So to host the naming ceremony and say, we honor you, we honor your presence here, we honor your presence with us. You are coming and you are transitioning and you are changing and you are in this fluid state of change, and we honor that. We honor that. So that's one way that manifests in our work. Destry, do you have something to speak to that? You think I did it? Can I pass to Minnie then? Okay, I'm going to pass to Minnie.
Well, what I've been teaching people in my journey and what I've learned and sharing with other elders and other people, my grandmother told me when I was little that from there on when I was born, that I was born as a two-spirit child and that I had every right to exercise my body the way I wanted to be, and that I have to teach when I grow up to be old, whatever is going to happen to me, when I grew up to be a storyteller or whatever, helping other people. She said, whatever you go, when you go back into your house, which means sweat lodge, when you go in there, because you're beginning your journey discovering who you are when you're little. And then when you get older and as you start working with the Anishinaabe Red Rope, when you're walking on this journey, she said, you have to tell everybody to go in your lodge the way they want to come in. And the way you're supposed to go in as a teacher, she said, is when you were born in your mother's stomach, you were born naked. And then when you go inside the lodge, you go back in the lodge naked. You don't cover your body at all. Men and women never covered their bodies with each other when they went in the sweat lodge, because they went in there to heal their body. And then when you have a child, you teach your body not to walk until it's ready. I think it gives about when they're learning to walk, when they're crawling, and soon as you know your child is going to walk, then you take your child out in the bush and do a ceremony with somebody that is an elder that will give that child a name. You go around the sacred fire and with your child, and the way that child is going to come. That's part of creation. That's a creation story. We don't, now they call it just what you guys said. Yes, walking out ceremony, and there's that wedding ceremony that when Anishinaabe and different culture will meet each other, whatever culture you're going to marry, if you're going to marry, like say last weekend I did a ceremony for the people that was getting married. It was 2 young lesbian women, and they were very beautiful. One is part Anishinaabe and Ojibwe, and then the other one was Scott and Dutch or something like that. I can't remember what it was, but anyway, they got married last weekend, and I did the ceremony with them. I told them, you guys go get your license at the city hall, because I didn't go to university or anything to get the license or whatever, and I'm not about to practice the 12 steps or the 7 steps of the prayer, whatever you want to call it, because that is not me. I am not Catholic. I am not religious of any other kind. The only religious that I know of me is with the Great Spirit, when I talk to the Great Spirit and the animals. So my grandmother, when she was telling me that is what I have to practice, I have to practice what she taught me. And my teaching was to give everything that I knew from what she was teaching me, and then also what I learned as I live in this universe with other people, other humans. She said, our lessons came from animals. We learn from the animals. If you ever really think about the animals, how they make circles, when you see a wolf ready to go and their family members, if you study them, you will see them. They always do it in a circle. Moose does everything in a circle. You'll see all the animals. So if you really want to learn something, check out the animals. They'll give you something more than what another human being can give you. That is what you got to do, is go sit out in the bush and study these animals. You will learn lots from them. That's what my grandmother told me, and that's where I learned my first thing. Speaking of wearing skirts, we never wore skirts when we were born. 7 generations ago, after 7 generations, after 7 generations. We were all naked running around before. Then we use clothing as animal clothing. They gave their lives to us. They gave their body, mind, and soul to us. And that's what we carry around when we're walking around here. One of the things I noticed coming to Winnipeg and being part of this Winnipeg event, I came here first thing early in the morning to go to my sunrise. I couldn't believe that I was going to be freezing my butt off over there this early in the morning, because I think there's so many different cultures that go here. We should start practicing. We should start having Native people having a place where they can go and smudge in the universities, in all the other places. I know in Thunder Bay they're trying to do that now. They've already got a place where people can go smudge and do their ceremonies. And then they, in the hospitals, is also working on doing some of that. So just to fight these institutions, because we are two-spirit people. We are the fighters. We are the warriors. That is why we are who we are. We are in the middle of the straight people. They give us what they gave us life, yes. We borrowed their bodies in mind and soul to be in there. And then when we came out, we were given this duty to do. Two-spirited people should be included, whatever you want to call it, two-spirit, gay, lesbian, or whatever, they or it. I'm just learning that too. So for young people, I always ask, please forgive me if I make a mistake of saying something. Sometimes I want to say it. I didn't even know what that means, but sometimes I want to say them. I don't know if I'm saying it right or not. And some get offended, and that's okay, because I am not learning anything very much yet. I'm just learning. I'm just like a brand new baby learning brand new language again, over. I never went to no big school. I only went to small one, and I learned as I could from Sesame Street. That was my big teacher. Snugglekapush was my favorite. I loved it. I learned lots from that animal. And then And then I went to school for 1 year to learn how to be a counselor. And then I came to Winnipeg and lived in Winnipeg and walked the streets in Winnipeg. I worked. When I first heard AIDS was available, coming out, I was the first one to learn about the AIDS education, and then I took it back to Thunder Bay and became an educator in Anishinaabe. I taught Alcoholics Anonymous. I translated that big book, Alcoholics Anonymous, about the 12 Steps program. So I just kind of wanted to say that, and I know she's telling me blah, blah, blah. And anyway, if you need any more information, come and see me and come and see the elders and the young ones.
Yeah, I just want to say chimigwich to this amazing panel. Can we give them a big round of applause? And just want to say happy birthday once again. Apologies if I use the wrong pronoun in my introduction, but so grateful that Emma came here to spend her birthday here with us. And as Mani says, we might not always get it right, but we keep learning and keep trying and try to do our best, right? Yeah. So Chimigwich, we have a few announcements. So tonight, your name tag gets you into an amazing Two-Spirit issue launch at the Winnipeg Art Gallery, and also free admission to the Insurgents Resurgence exhibit. So please take advantage of that. We have a brief break, then we'll do some World Cafe. Dinner is here, and thank you so much for listening to the panel. Yeah, so it's roundtable time, but we're going to have a break. Yeah, just a few 10 minutes.